What's going on, everybody? Sharpie360 here, and today is September 30th, and that means the third dev blog for Stranded Deep 2 is now up, so we're gonna check it out, and it looks like it's talking about a little bit of face-to-face time with the team, a little bit of base building, and a little bit of raft building, and kind of the fundamentals of the crafting system that they're kind of going for. So it's really cool. There's a lot of information in there that I'm excited to check out, so let's not waste any time and jump into it. And if you find this video entertaining or informative at all, make sure to hit that like button and possibly subscribe, and I'd greatly appreciate that. Sweet, let's do it. All right, so here we go. Czech Mates. Czech Mates. Recently, I was able to visit the dev team in Prague. I had visited last year when we formed the studio and everything kicked off, but since then, more positions had been filled and there were a lot of new faces. We work together every day, but it's hard to beat some of the real FaceTime. Everyone was invited to the North Beach office in Prague, where we held a mini summit. When we arrived, we were greeted by a cool themed display that Nikki, our director of marketing, and the team had put together. Neat little fish, little thingy. Look at there's Wilson. They got some rope, some coconuts, a paddle, a nice little hat, and some fishies up there, some more sticks and binoculars. It's pretty cool. And a little ammo box, very nice. Over the next 2 days, we covered a lot of topics. I expanded on the vision and goals for the next game, talking about where we started with SD1, some of the challenges and lessons learned, and where we're taking Stranded Deep with SD2 and beyond. Presentations from our leads led to great discussions and insights that really helped us align as a team. We covered so much, but I also felt that I could have spoken for another 2 days. Maybe next time. There was time for some fun team building activities outside of the office. If you haven't played Blood on the Clock Tower, I recommend it. I haven't played it. Overall, it felt like the team grew closer and came away super energized for the project and what we're building together. Nice, look at these pictures. Get the whole team. Very nice. Let's play Spot the Dog in one of the pictures. I don't know. I think the dog is back here on this lady's lap, or this person's lap. And if we look at the picture right here, you can see they're actually running a prototype or whatever of the game. That's pretty cool. Looks like they're doing some base building stuff. We spent some downtime getting the new office coffee machine working, mission critical, and bouncing around more ideas. We also used the time to reflect on the progress of our game mechanics, like the building system. All right, let's get into that. I'm super stoked on that. Building beyond survival. Previously, I had talked about our experiments with the building system and how we finally landed on a version that we feel is the right direction for SD2. The building system in SD1 worked pretty well and was a solid base. It was easy to understand and not overly complicated, but there were definitely ways it could be expanded and improved. How should we do that? Our goal for the new building system is to be familiar but better in every way. Building 2.0. It needs to be intuitive and not get in the way, and it should enable more personalization. Ultimately, the building system should give you the tools to showcase your creativity. Nice. I like the way that sounds. We experimented with a lot of different ideas. Writing about it now brings to mind an alleged quote from the artist Michelangelo talking about his sculpture David. You just chip away at the stone that doesn't look like David. We've spent a lot of time experimenting with ideas and chipping away the ones that we don't feel like Stranded Deep. Some ideas were cool but didn't fit our style of game. Some were too fine-grained and wouldn't scale well. Even though these versions were discarded, the best elements from each version have made it into our current version, like custom material selection and a blueprint system allowing you to save your favorite creations to deploy again somewhere else. That sounds really cool, actually. I like that. We're well on our way to creating Building 2.0. Nice. Very cool. Primitive to polished. One aspect I wanted to improve was the appearance of the different building tiers, enabling you to progress from building very crude structures to very refined structures that have clean, sharp edges. SD1 had different visual tiers, but the final tier was still pretty rough. In SD2, we want you to have a stronger feeling of accomplishment as you progress from building stick shacks to stone mansions. Being able to build something refined from quality materials should be a milestone in your survival journey and represent mastery of the environment around you. Which is cool because it makes it sound like they're gonna be planning on more of like a long-term survival experience versus escape, like the first one, where the kind of the objective was mainly just to see how you could escape and as fast as you could escape kind of thing. I don't really think they meant or intended for people to play super long, but then they have 100 days survived achievement, so it's kind of subjective, but there's definitely a minimalist aspect to the first game that kind of incentivizes you to finish the game versus hanging around. Because there's just not a lot to do after you play it for, 30 days. All right, let's do this. To make this a reality, our director, Saba, and the lead designer, Prokop, set about blocking out the shapes and experimenting with geometry. There are a lot of edge cases to solve with potential gaps, overlaps, overhangs, and no perfect solution. It's very much a case of deciding where to put the compromises so it looks the most visually satisfying. Below are some of the examples of possible shapes and work in progress experiments moving problems to different areas. All right, sweet, we got these things. Looks like they got all the pieces laid out right here that's available at the moment, and then another view of it, and then it looks like they're just kind of piecing together different foundational modular pieces. They got the traditional square, they got the rust triangle, I guess, if you will, and then they have, looks like a half square. So you can get both versions of the triangle. And that's kind of probably where a lot of the trouble is coming from, but who knows? I don't know. It looks like they got some pretty cool stuff here. And then if we look here, it looks like there's going to be some support systems, structural systems that they're looking at doing, seeing what could be placed and what can't be placed and whatnot. So it's all up into kind of interpretation based on these colors, but it looks cool. I'm digging it. And we'll see some further examples in just a second here. Oh, and just like that, below are some examples of Saba's testing what's possible using the shapes in our current version. So you can see he's building into the ocean a little bit on these kind of, and then you got your standard house, something a little bit more elegant sized, and then it looks like a little bit of a watchtower kind of design with that, with those triangle pieces and whatnot. So it's cool. And then this actually looks really cool too, because it comes from this square or this rectangle, and then it kind of juts off like that. So I'm curious to see what the floor plan for that would look like and how that lines up and stuff. Interesting. It's going to be a lot more robust than SD1, and I'm liking that. All right, cool. Let's move on a little bit further. There will be a lot of variety within these shapes, from crude panel fashions out of sticks, palm fronds, and ropes to refined timber planks neatly fixed with resin. Ooh. All the way up to materials like stone and plaster. Dang, dude. We need to finalize the possible materials and combinations that make sense with the resources available in the world, but there's a lot of potential. An important step in creating these new building pieces will be choosing what materials to use. Sticks and stones. In SD2, we're breaking down everything you can craft into key components and letting you choose what materials to use for each component. This is a big shift from the usual paradigm. Instead of defining combinations using specific materials, combinations are defined using types of materials. Building pieces have key components like framing, some types of fill material, and a binding material. So for a foundation, you'll require X framing materials, X fill materials, and X binding materials instead of X sticks and X ropes. Framing materials could be sticks, logs, rocks, planks, etc. You kind of get the idea. You'll be able to choose the materials for each of these key components, giving you a lot more control over the appearance and stats. As you progress deeper into the world, you'll find new materials, including rare and exotic materials, if you venture far enough. This is a work in progress, and we're prototyping multiple versions of this mechanic to see what works best across crafting, building, and even cooking. This is dope. It reminds me of Abiotic Factor, where it's like, well, I guess in a sense where you're creating recipes and stuff, not so much of the crafting, because you kind of have to use the same crafting, but in the sense that like there's different material types and you just need materials of that type. I guess a better example would be something like Pacific Drive or something like that. Anyways, it's pretty cool that they're going about it like that, and it's not going to be so finite on exactly sticks, stones, and rope to build something. So cool. I like the concept. It sounds like there's going to be a lot more materials to work with. So I'm here for it. It's awesome. Or even vein, because vein, it's all about your, like when you dismantle components and stuff, you get the component or material type a bunch of back, not like, oh, printer pieces or, you know, computer pieces or branches or whatever. You get wood scrap or plastic scrap. So it's kind of like that. Dock it like it's hot. Another major improvement is the ability to build bigger and better rafts. Nice, that's sweet. This was a highly requested feature in SD1. Now, any building piece that you can place on a foundation can also be placed on a raft. Making it possible to build large houseboats and even mobile bases. Very cool. That is super, I'm super excited about that. That's all I wanted to do in SD1 is make a giant houseboat. And you couldn't, because you couldn't place anything on the boat without mods. And it still didn't even work that well. So the fact that we're going to be able to do that with this is going to be friggin' dope. I'd love that. This opens up new strategies for surviving on land and water. There will be new challenges on the water, so you'll need to build a capable raft to survive. You may even need to think about things like the size and durability of your raft if you want to access certain areas. Ooh, this is gonna be cool, dude. I love it. Oh man, I'm getting so hyped for this. All the stuff that we wanted. A pain point in SD1 when building a raft was needing to drag it around and find a position where there were no obstructions to attach new pieces and make it bigger. To improve the experience in SD2, we're adding a new item, the bollard. Sweet, these dock bollards. If you place a bollard on your raft and another bollard on a foundation or the terrain, it will allow you to moor your raft with a rope. That's very cool. Instead of having to use an anchor or just kind of just hope it doesn't drag it up onto shore, for instance. The more, the merrier, by Claire. So Claire is part of the team again. I know that some people were wondering if she's going to be continuing on with SD2. It sounds like, yeah, she's going to be doing a lot of the community management again, so that's super cool. This makes raft building a lot easier and will also help you not lose your raft. This is just one of the small but meaningful ways we're making things smoother and improving quality of life while you try to survive. Yeah, appreciate that. That's super dope. Next up, we got challenges. While we're making great progress, there's plenty of problems to solve along the way. I talked earlier about the tricky geometry. Another challenge we're working on is how resources are used for building. We made an early decision that the amount of resources required to build something should roughly represent the final product. This means that you receive 4 real logs when you chop down a palm tree, not 100 units of a wood resource. And building a foundation requires 4 logs at a minimum. You can see that you'll need a lot of large resources to build. Large resources take more time to gather and take up more space in your inventory. The challenge is balancing this so gathering doesn't get grindy and transportation doesn't become frustrating, which it can based on SD1. If you've done any type of advanced base building or big base building, gathering materials the manual way is definitely a grindy chore. So with this in mind, we're testing 2 styles of building placement. One version lets you quickly plan the layout of your structure using ghosts. In this version, you don't need to have the resources available to place a ghost. This allows you to visualize what you want to build and confirm that it works without obstructions. Then you add resources to the individual ghosts to complete the construction. However, it introduces the questions like, should ghosts have colliders? If yes, how do you prevent using ghosts as a hack to access areas? If not, is it okay that players can't reach upper levels to plan out a multi-story structure? If they're gonna go about it with ghosts and stuff like that, I think that no colliders should be the case. It's more ripe for abuse if there's colliders, because why would you build the actual platform if you can just stand on the ghost? So that's the way that I look at it. If it's gonna be a kind of a system of like, maybe you can snap a few pieces together to kind of go along, or have a couple of steps forward in the build and not have the entire structure ghosted out in a giant blueprint. Yeah, so basically, I feel like if they're going to be doing the ghost blueprint thing, it should be pretty reserved in the amount that you can place down and not having colliders and stuff like that. And that's that. So let's look at the second version. The second version requires you to have resources available in your inventory or in close proximity before you can place the building pieces, similar to how building worked in SD1. This works but suffers from the resource management issues I mentioned. It was also common for players in SD1 to find they couldn't complete a structure the way they had planned due to some random obstruction in the environment. But this version also introduced questions like, how do you prevent a raft base from floating off into the distance after being placed? Should we prevent things like this? But I don't understand, a raft base, like in the water? Why wouldn't it float away if it was just floating in the water? I think if they did a combination of the two, like mostly based on the SD1 version where you kind of have to have the materials with you and whatnot. Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know. I think it'd be cool if they're gonna have bigger structures like what we were seeing in the pictures just a little bit ago. I think the ghost blueprint would probably be ideal to have a better visualization of what you're kind of working on. And it sounds like if it's gonna be an issue of the environment might cause obstructions more often than not, it probably would be a good idea to have that planned out in advance. But at the same time, like I said earlier, not having colliders and maybe having a limit on the pieces that you can ghost place together. And I guess it comes down to how much stuff we can carry in our inventory or have around us, because if it's a constant like running down to our resource pile, running back up with a piece to place it, running back down, running back up, running back down over and over like SD1, that tends to take a long time and it becomes really grindy in that way. But if we have the ability to carry more of our materials with us, or maybe have some sort of like universal storage system inside of the proximity area of the base that we can just pull from when building, I think that would probably go a lot further in the second version that they want to implement. So it's kind of, and that would even be cool in the first version too, just having, I think universal storage to a certain degree is kind of a necessary thing at this point, just because of the amount of items and containers that end up being in these games. It becomes very unmanageable really quickly unless the UI is really on point. So I think having some sort of universal storage system would benefit both of these routes very effectively. But yeah, I think, like I said, Version 1 more likely going to be realistic in the bigger structures and the more future builds and stuff versus version 2. And that's my thoughts. Challenges aside, the building system is coming together nicely, and I'll follow up with our progress in a future vlog. Excellent. I look forward to it. Message in a bottle. The dev team is currently transitioning from prototyping to production workflows. They're doing lots of research into how to build the best game possible, investigating how to get good performance from the engine, and evaluating best solutions for systems like multiplayer, and sharing user-created content across platforms. Our new hero animal is almost complete, so we're getting started on the animation pipeline. The initial short list of animals that will be in the game at release has been feature locked, and the environment biomes are close behind. Very cool. We're continuing to develop the underlying plot that will ground our protagonist in the setting. This is a light narrative framework that's just enough to make the world coherent without turning it into a heavy story game. This includes building our proto-culture and the possible antagonists that might be responsible for all the weird and wonderful things you'll be able to discover in SD2. And finally, to wrap up this blog, there's one more thing I wanted to share from our Prague visit. Our message in a bottle for each team member to add a message to the bottle, which will open when SD2 launches. Some team members have already added theirs, with more to come as the project and team grows. This is very on theme for SD, and I can't wait to open it. Stay alive. There's the bottle right there. Very cool. I wonder what Wally put in as his message, Claire. Very cool. Excellent. Well, I think that is a very good update for what they're working on in the dev blog. I'm very excited to see what they kind of go with the building system and what route they end up going with ultimately. I think there's a number of cool possibilities that they could do, and the fact that they're looking to play on and enhance players' experiences building bases and rafts is going to be phenomenal. It'll give us a lot more motivation to work and progress further and survive and stuff. I'm very excited to look at these rafts, and especially the fact that we're going to be able to build a houseboat essentially and have everything that we can place on land be able to be placed on the raft as well. And I think that is going to open up a whole mess of possibilities for gameplay and stuff like that. It'll be really cool to see how that works as well. All right, well, and that is all that we have today for the Stranded Deep 2 dev blog. This is the third dev blog. If you want to check out the dev blogs for yourself, I'll have the link in the description. It's pretty cool. You kind of get an idea of what they're going off of. Go back and check out the rest of them. And as they come out, I'll continue to cover them, and I'm excited to see where they're going with it. They're going in a lot of directions that I dig, so I'm excited to see that. Okay, cool. So if you found this video entertaining or informative at all, make sure to hit that like button, comment below on what you're excited for about the building system, and if you prefer version 1 or version 2 that they're working on, because I'd like to hear what your thoughts on that are as well, especially featuring the boat and what you're going to do with making a houseboat or not. It'd be pretty cool. Make sure to go check out the rest of my Stranded Deep content, and if you want to support the channel further, I have memberships and merch available, and I'm also on Rumble as well. Very good. All right, that being said, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one, and until next time, stay sharp.